Hey guys, what's up? It's me, People25 here, and today I am bringing you my top 14 coasters of Six Flags Great America. Now, this is a video I've done in the past, at least similarly, but I did this last in 2016, the summer of that year. It is a year and a half since I've done that video. They've added a new coaster since then, and the off season is upon us. This is my home park. The power rankings are changing all the time because now I get re-ride upon re-ride upon re-ride. Things change over the course of a year. And yeah, like I said before, the off season upon us because on November 19th of this year, 2017, Six Flags Great America closed for the 2017 season after a dismal last call festival, mostly due to weather, but low attendance was also a big factor, and low operations of big attractions when everything was meant to be open. Park will not open until I believe the second to last weekend in April 2018, a week earlier than usual, and will most likely be the next time I visit another amusement park. I'm not going anywhere out foreign. I'm not going to go to somewhere in the west or the south or the southeast or Atlantic coast. I'm not going anywhere south of here. I'm pretty much going to stay grounded in my home state of Illinois for the entirety of the winter and spring. I don't really leave my house that much except for school and work. And, well, like I said that, this is another record season of Great America in the books. Of course, I will redo my power rankings from last year with the 2017 standards. And, yes, this is the 2-month anniversary of me uploading my last video. I still really got to try and get better on this. My schedule is still kicking my ass. My schedule is very filled up. I'm valuing my sleep even more. I'm 17 years old because since then, Armistice Day, Thanksgiving, my birthday, and Christmas have all passed and Halloween since my last video. It's been a lot. I'm savoring my free time more than ever, but let's just get this prelude out of the way. We'll start the video right freaking now. Number 14 is basically Sprocket Rockets of Vekoma Junior coaster, and this is the coaster I've ridden the least out of any coaster in the park that was open during my lifespan, or during my coaster enthusiast lifespan. So no, Shockwave doesn't count. I've only been on this once, and I really don't have any need to ride it more than that. It's basic, bland kiddie coaster. Doesn't really offer a whole lot, but it's a good fit for families, and it's tucked away in a pretty isolated corner in the park. The soon disenfranchised Cam cartoon because the license with Hanna-Barbera is running real thin with Six Flags. Scooby-Doo's hanging on by a toenail, and Jetsons and Flintstones and Yogi Bear, no way. That's a topic for another day. And really, this is one of two kiddie coasters in the park. The next one, number 13, has much more sentimental value to me, which is Little Dipper. I rode this thing for the first time. It was my first ever coaster back in 2008 or 2009, one of the last years of Kiddieland's operations before it was replaced by, I believe, a Costco. I haven't ridden it in a couple years because the lines get really long, but the capacity is really bad. Dispatches often take a minute or two. Long lines, run train operations. I can't justify waiting 30 to 45 minutes because Raging Bull, it's usually just as long or maybe a little shorter depending on the day. Because people might be over at Joker, Goliath, Justice League, or the new Super Loop opening in 2018. God, I hate that thing. But yeah, Little Dipper is better than Space's Sprocket Rockets, but still worse than the rest of the competition. I probably want to ride at least once in 2018 just to get a nostalgia rush, if I can find a way to get on this thing. Maybe I'll catch a 5-minute queue. Number 12 is Demon. Non-kiddie coasters. This would probably be the one I avoid every time to go to Great America. Demon really is just not fun. It's rough, jerky, and just unenjoyable. But I do love watching this thing from a distance. Especially when I'm over in Southwest Territory by Cold Stone Creamery, the arcade there, where the area where Manslaughter Manor takes place, and Fright Fest and Ricochet especially, and going under the bridge between X-Flight and Justice League. This thing's fun to watch. However, riding it, it looks better than it rides. It's another one of these rides. It's another Arrow that looks better than it rides. Most infamously, the example of that is Vortex at Kings Island. It looks a lot better than it rides. And really, I mean, my opinion on this is to ace it or replace it. This thing's 40 years old now. I think it just got through its 41st season because the base parts have been operating since the 1976's turn of the century. Really, this thing, I mean, if you can keep it around reasonably, that's fine. If Vekoma still makes parts for this, of the old coasters like this, it's fine. But really, this thing, I could see it being removed in the next 10 years because of increasing operational expenses. Yeah. This thing's just not fun. pick up for the credit and maybe take your kids on it if you want them to experience an inversion for the first time. If you're only in Illinois, but other than that, just don't ride this every time. It's not fun. Number 11 is Dark Knight. I actually ride this thing more than some of the other higher entries on this list, but just mostly for the memes and the inside jokes than actually being a good ride. I mean, considering that if I bring my friends, like one of my best friends just got a season pass for the first time, came with me a lot in 2017 with his dad whenever it was bring a friend. My younger brother comes with me. We're all in our teenage years. We just like to get on a train in solidarity and just make inappropriate or offensive humor, just so, in hopes that none of the operators will hear us and all the people inside the box with us, where the Wild Mouse circuit is, will hear us. I don't like this thing as much. Like the Wild Mouse is good. It's a good Wild Mouse, but the theming, I just don't like the loud noises. The two in particular. There's a gunshot towards the middle of the ride. I think after the first set of switchbacks, and then like a straight section after those. There's like the next turn after that. There is like an environmental protection agency, and then a gunshot from the Joker. And at the end of the brake run, there's a train. Like right as you hit the brakes, there's a train that just blares in your ear. I know when they're coming, so I can like plug in my ears just in the amount of time. But really, this thing, it's not a good ride. It's okay. It's not a. I don't ride this because it's good. I more ride this because it's just funny to ride this sometimes, especially with my friends. It's just a personal inside joke at this point. There's some fun inside jokes in this thing, but yeah. In terms of just sheer quality, this thing isn't up to snuff with any other thing in the park. Number 10 is Joker. The new for 2017 attraction, in my opinion, is a suitable replacement for Orbit and that other attraction that nobody ever talked about because the line was basically a walk-on every time. Short and pretty sweet ride. It definitely varies. This ride does sometimes have its good days, it has its bad days. Sometimes I get like 4 flips on it. Sometimes I only get like 1 or 2, and those are like the forced rotations. Sometimes I get naturally occurring flips. Sometimes I don't. This thing is the best ride I've ever had. It's completely out of this world attraction. It's out of control. It's just the ride takes you for its own for about 30 seconds or maybe even less. And yeah, I still owe you guys a review of this thing, even though there's more clones going in next year. Well, just one to Mexico. This thing is just fun. However, I've noticed that throughout the summer and into the fall, I've ridden this thing less and less. It's fun, but I wouldn't do it every time in favor of some of the higher quality rides. Number 9 is Whizzer, a rare credit Ace Coaster landmark, and it's a fun ride for all ages, including me. However, I like how this ride is intertwining one of the few wooded areas of Great America. The park is usually pretty bare with its attractions. Trees aren't really prevalent a lot in the park, but in Hometown Square, in this area by the railroad, Whizzer, and Hometown Fun Machine, it's quite heavily wooded. I do like how a lot of trees and there's some small ponds there, and how loose the restraint system is with just a seatbelt. It's a good ride. I really do like Whizzer, especially when I take my friend in the toboggan-style seatings and just get a little bit crazy because male coaster enthusiasts in this thing, don't tell me you're taking your friend on this one and just embrace the awkwardness of the seating arrangements. Because you're literally sitting in another dude's lap, or some dude is sitting in your lap, and it's really awkward. Sometimes people take advantage of it, some people are just like, eh. So this ride, in my opinion, is you can enjoy the ride most when you're in solidarity, but the capacity goes way down if you do that. It's a bizarre ride, but I do quite like it. I hope this thing stays around for as long as time. This thing is a great ride, and I really don't see any other better replacement for a family coaster than this thing. This one's one of the best family coasters that I've been on. That I've been on. Some spinner, maybe like a Mauer spinner, if anything, would be a suitable replacement. But that's not the time to talk about this. This thing I want to stay for a long while. American Eagle is number 8. Now, this is the one that is my most conflicted coaster. I've gotten really good rides on this, and I've gotten really bad rides in American Eagle. Sometimes it's just it's nearly as good as like a lower GCI, like Apocalypse, Lightning Racer, Ghost Rider. But sometimes the ride is so rough, it's comparable to Roar or Wildcat. It really is just a complete mess. I never have two of the same rides, and also this would be a top tier ride if the wood was up to modern standards. If GCI or Gravity Group or somebody came around and redid the wood, or Intamin put their prefab on it, it would be a completely top tier attraction. There would be no questioning this thing would be top 3 in the park. And unfortunately, this ride is 35 years old. I believe it was the first Intamin wooden coaster of only a few, and has not received a major overhaul in its track work or support structure in its life. It did got like partially painted throughout the season, but even then, it's very noticeable that they only painted the exterior and the interior wood, like all the spider web structure. They did not try and paint, so it looks worse than it did when the paint was a little bit chipped. That's the problem with painting wooden coasters. Once they chip after 30 years, they look terrible unless you want to go send somebody to climb through all the structure and paint it, or however they go around and do that stuff. I mean, using my ranking standards, this is as far as I can place. I do like I still conflicted whether or not I do with the best ride or the average ride on this. But either which, I think the best ride on my next entry, the next wooden coaster at the park, is better than this. And that said coaster being Viper. This was the superior of the Great America Woodies for a long time. Even though since 2016, it's been going down in quality. It's gotten rougher. I think starting at about 2015, I think it was. Either 2014 or 2015, it started getting really bad. It's not terrible, but it's gotten rough and it's gotten unenjoyable in some cases. However, this ride would actually be probably in the top 5 if it were in its 2012, 2013 state. I was young, I was small, I was eager to ride coasters no matter what they were. I had no concept of what coasters were bad and good. But I swear, even at that point, in 2012, 2013, the ride was smoother than like 3 times smoother than it is right now. It was ridiculous. It was actually a really good wooden coaster, really solid. Better than Eagle ever was. I rode this thing every time. But it makes sense. Times change. This ride is 20 years old from 26. This thing just went through its 21st season. I think it was built in 1996 or something like that. Somewhere between 1994 to 1997. Somewhere in that time period. And most wooden coasters do show their age. This one is getting there. And since Six Flags does everything but the bare minimum to make sure their wooden coasters are up to snuff, it just keeps getting rougher as time passes. And steel coasters just keep going up on my list. Wooden coasters are really fun and all, but they are extremely expensive, and I don't trust Six Flags to keep them up to complete snuff. Like, retracking Apocalypse was already a stingy enough endeavor at Magic Mountain. They did that over 2 seasons as well. So it's kind of ridiculous. They just RMC'd most of the ones that are bad. Number 6 is V2 Vertical Velocity. Just barely missing the top 5 is the launch coaster at the park. The only launch coaster at the park, actually. And the one that is rumored to go, unfortunately, because of outdated LIM technology. As much as I hope that doesn't happen, we'll talk about that later if it actually happens. It's really fun, although I will say it is pretty shaky. And the front spike is hot trash. It's good going up, but it's absolutely terrible going down. But riding back row in this thing, or at least the back 4 rows, double-digit rows or higher, or double-digit is the way to go on this. Getting row 10 to row 14. Because going up the back spike, the first time especially, it is absolutely nuts. The negative Gs are some of the strongest amount I've ever felt in my life. It is probably the single best moment of airtime in the entire park. It's either that or Goliath and that airtime hill just after the first overbank turn. And I will say, like I said, back row is the only way to go. But this thing, if it just were a little smoother, like it wasn't as shaky, and if that front spike wasn't as terrible, I feel like this thing could have set my number 5 pick, Superman Ultimate Flight. I believe this was the 3rd of the 3 Superman Ultimate Flight coasters to occupy, or to go into Six Flags, and it just happens to occupy the 5th spot again. So I don't believe this ride has changed position from 2016. And it's a really good fit in the park's lineup. It's really fun. I just think that it really doesn't bring too much to the table. Now that I've been on a really good flying coaster, a premier flying coaster, that being Tatsu, this ride isn't as great as I used to make it up to be. So, yeah. It just doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, the drop isn't that good. The pretzel loop is extremely forceful. Other than the pretzel loop and the 0G roll, it just kind of banks. Doesn't really do a whole lot other than in its compact layout. And the ride else is kind of disgusting with some of the gum and peeling paint. and the motor issues and the lift hill coming up as of late. This thing is already experiencing its problems, and this thing was added in 2003. So yeah, I believe it'll be 15 years old come 2018. And this also, in comparison, this Superman Ultimate Flight and the next two entries are my group of high tier trio, as I like to call it. Which you'll see the next two entries in this will be the high tier trio. They always fall short of number 1 and 2, but they're the rides that basically are the huge supporters in the lineup, but are good enough to stand on their own. Number 4 is X-Flight. This ride has actually been in the downturn as of late because I've been riding it less and less over the course of a few seasons. I used to like to ride this every time, but now it just isn't as fun as I used to be. Wing coasters aren't really as I don't really appreciate wing coasters as much as I used to before. It lacks the forces, and it really does not give that wow factor from the other rides. It's also got a bit of a pulse. The wings like to just shake around. The ride actually violently shakes you sometimes when you're about to go into that inline twist, which still, best part of the ride is that inline twist. This ride it was good up front, but now it's just not, its magic is wearing out. I don't know if I burned it out or if it just isn't as good as I used to make it out to be. I remember this thing being in my top 30 at one point. I don't even know if it cracks top 50 in my list of 150 coaster credits. I'm not even sure if this is better than Gatekeeper. It's just, yeah. And I've ridden lower entries like Superman Dark Knight, probably Viper. I rode it more than X-Lite in the second half of the 2017 season. This thing just really isn't doing it. But I still really like it, and when I do get a good ride on it, it's a good ride. I do like this thing in the back row more than the front. We're getting back rows a little bit tough because people know that the back row is really good. And the lines in this thing often get kind of long because it's still popular. And I think this actually just turned 5 years old, 2017. It still runs well. Moving on to number 3 is Batman the Ride. This ride's been on the uptick as of late. I've come to appreciate Batman the Ride clones more and more every time I ride them because they're forceful, they're intense, they're strong, they're really fun and intense rides. I mean, everyone has been on a Batman the Ride clone at one point. Almost every Six Flags has that. I think there's like a dozen of them in the world, and quite a few of them in America outside of Six Flags parks. I mean, of course, we know they're compact, forceful, and enjoyable despite how many of them you ride. And this one, I just ride more and more. In fact, I almost rode this every time I went to Great America this season. It's just that fun. I'm enjoying it more and more. And the crew is getting better on Batman, though the operations are still disappointing compared to others. And number 2 is Goliath, of course. This ride is this is the overhyped ride in my opinion. Either that or number 1 actually just has a soft spot. This thing is really good. It opened up in 2014, actually late, because I went to, truth be told, this is actually my second RMC. This thing was supposed to open up in May of 2014, but it actually opened up in June because of mechanical issues and a small fire in the control box. So I rode Iron Rattler before this, and that just it might have been a reason I set a bad example, because Iron Rattler was a really good ride, and this isn't as good. But I do have quite a few problems putting with this ride. Of course, a short list of these reasons. Poor operation is a big one. The restraints aren't as enjoyable as the next one, which there's only 2 strong moments of airtime, an uncomfortable moment coming out of the zero-G stall, consistently 1 hour line, which of course I have no power over, when the next ride on number 1 has it's a people eater compared to this. Just having to wait 60 plus minutes on a weekday to get 30 to 40 seconds of just non-re-rideable, familiar action just really isn't worth it. While number 1 has kept me entertained for double the length, half the line, and of course one of the most sound communities, one of the best places to be in the park. My hometown, Southwest Territory, with its keystone coaster, Raging Bull. Now, this is a small boat, and if any, but I stand firm that Raging Bull is better than Goliath, and it will for many years to come. Not many things can upset Great America for having Raging Bull being its number 1 coaster. Unless they take out the log flumes and put like an Intamin or Mac multi-launch, or put in an Intamin Blitz or something like that. I know the airtime is lackluster. I get that it's a hyper twister layout that's mostly turns, but I love how re-rideable this thing is. And I love the drop. The drop is the keystone moment of this coaster. Going in the back row over that pre-drop and the actual drop, 200 feet, falling for what seems like forever. It's absolutely nuts. And it has its own fucking original mascot. How can you go with that? If you want to see it, there's actually a video, like, I don't know, 4 months ago that I had one for that, if you want to see what he looks like in action. And really, how many rides outside of Europe can say that it has its own original mascot? And by the way, copyrighted characters like superheroes or Looney Tunes or whatever doesn't count. The only one I can think of is Fire Chaser Express. And this ride is really the best Illinois can get and has been a centerpiece for all Chicago, Chicagoland, and even Milwaukee coaster enthusiasts, since the market for this park is freaking huge. It's the best park within 6 hours. There's no better parks within 6 hours of radius. Then you get to like Holiday World, Kings Island, Cedar Point, Kentucky Kingdom, Valley Fair, Six Flags St. Louis. This got a 6-hour bubble of exclusive market for being a mega park. Like, you only have Santa's Village, Little America, Indiana Beach, Michigan's Adventure, and and Mount Olympus within like a little bubble of this, within like only a 4-hour bubble, and those aren't even as good as this. This is a key ride. I've been riding this since 2010. I've never had a bad experience in this ride, and really, when I eventually move out of this godforsaken state, Illinois, because of politics, financial reasons, and just the general cost of living, because anyone in Illinois can tell you that, this was the thing I'll most certainly miss the most, besides, of course, my family and my friends. But Raging Bull, it's been a center part in my life. I continue to ride this thing. I continue to love every single ride I take on this thing. And overall, this is one I'd never want to give up. If there's one attraction in the entire park that I'd be devastated about its departure or its relocation, it'd be this. This is the best coaster in Great America. It's mostly personal. Quality-wise, I believe Goliath is a better quality ride, but even I have a hard time saying that. This thing is just so good. It's underrated. I love this thing. Like, this thing gets so much smack. I can understand why, but it's so good. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. I can talk about Raging Bull for hours and hours upon end. I love this thing. I probably have several hundred rides. I wish I can just pull up a magic clock in like my wrist or whatever to get how many times I've ridden Raging Bull. That number will easily be in the triple digits throughout, this will be 7, 8 seasons that I've been on this thing now. It's crazy. And it wasn't my first hyper, but it certainly continues to be one of the best that I've ever been on. It is my hometown wonder, the hometown gemstone, the hometown hero, and just, it really just will never burn out. This ride will never burn out. I've been on this thing 6, 10 times in a day if the line's short enough, and it never gets old. Like, hopping in the back row edge seat of this ride is an experience that I will never get sick of, no matter how many times I do it. Just like riding Fury in the front row, I'll never get sick of that. B&Ms are so re-rideable. Anyway, guys, that's been my video. If you guys have enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscription. And yeah, my apologies for not uploading for 2 months, I will say. I hope you guys have a great insert unit time here.